initiatives like Philosophy for Children. But in regards to school councils, I think my experience is that it used to be the same type of kids who asked the same type of questions, often around things like school uniform changes or meals, adding a new meal for the school lunch. And then you always got the wild card every year. In our school, it was always, can we change the front yard to a football pitch and astroturf it? And that was asked year upon year. It might have actually been the same child, bless him, asking year upon year. So yeah, it was a very exclusive model. So I think what I like about the Smart School Councils, it's the very opposite. It's a very inclusive model to involve all pupils. So yeah, I'm very excited to join Smart School Councils as the membership manager.
Great, thanks, Karen. Great intro. And yes, I am going to. Thanks for everyone for telling me how long you've been taking part, and we're going to be talking about some of the themes that Karen's just identified. But let's just move on to the next slide first, because we like to stick to time at Smart School Councils. I'm a fan of respecting how busy you guys are and keeping to time, and also that you made time for us at such a busy time in the year. So let's just introduce yourself. So my name is not Sam Evans. Sam is a lovely Welshman, but he's not me. He must be delivering something else at the moment. So I'm taking over for him today. And Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
There you go. Yep. So as I mentioned, I was a teacher in primary schools for 15 years for my sins, and really loved it. But my thing in teaching was very much developing the PSHE side of children and the social emotional aspects of learning. So this opportunity, when it came up for Smart School Council, was really too good to miss. So I've been here for a few weeks as membership manager, so hopefully you'll get to know me a little bit more over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, Karen. Great intro. Welcome to the organisation as well. So what we're going to do today, half an hour, we're going to talk a little bit about Smart School Councils, going to give you a bit of a summary of the programme, and also some case studies, but also answer your questions. So I know it's a lot of us talking, but please do stick any thoughts, comments, questions, anything really in the chat box. We've got it right in front of us. This is about kind of helping you to understand and giving you some ideas as well. So please do stick your comments in there. We've not asked you to be on screen today because why would you want to be on screen? We'll do that for you today. Karen, do you want to tell everyone a bit about the organisation?
There we go. The Smart School Council is a teacher-led charity, started 5 years ago by a youth worker, Asher Jacobsberg, and also Greg, who's here still to this day. Spent time, Greg did, for working for the DFE, though I know he has asked for you not to hold that against him. But the Smart School Council's core programme, it has over 300 member schools now and growing. And I think the thing that Smart School Council is most proud of is the variety of schools that are joining the programme. You know, we have our youngest to oldest schools, there are international schools that have joined us. But more than that, you've also got children who are in additional settings, such as PRUs and SEN settings, which Smart School Council is particularly proud of, because often they're the children that feel a little bit excluded and perhaps don't feel as if their voice is heard so much. And as you can see from the bottom of this screen, there's also a growing number of organisations and companies that are recognising and supporting Smart School Council as well.
Great, thank you, Karen. That's great. And I guess I'd like to sort of follow on that by just talking a little bit about kind of why I thought it was important to set up the organisation. And I think the reason why we did that is because we think that young people leading change and using their voice through school councils and democracy is great, is really important, and that's what should happen at school. But so often the way that schools do this could be improved, and it was about kind of saying, well, actually, sometimes with school councils there's a few issues associated with them. I think that in my time kind of visiting schools and working with them, you could kind of see quite easily, and also there was sort of a lot of frustration, I think, among teachers who maybe wanted to improve how things were working. So what we saw, and please do put a comment in the chat if any of these are familiar to you, or that they sort of ring true. So same things coming up every year, the sort of uniform, school meals, that kind of thing, that what Karen mentioned. Thanks, Jess. The 2 teacher-led, that's one you've identified already. Yeah, run out of steam by Christmas quite often. There's a lot of impetus at the start of the year, but then come Christmas, it's like, well, what's happening in the school council? 2 paper-based, it is 2021, and so much of our lives are online, and that's got good and bad bits. But if we do want to attract young people, particularly those who are not interested in kind of the traditional formats of engagement, then maybe we should try and be a bit more digital. 2 teacher-led. Bryony's agreed with that. I think that's quite difficult, isn't it? If you're the school council coordinator and it's on you for the projects to be a success, you don't want to be the person who's like, oh, the projects haven't gone well, then I think that's a little bit difficult sometimes. So you might give them a bit of an extra helping hand. And the question is then, well, how is that about pupil voice or them learning things that often young people will learn that, well, yeah, adults will step in for me and do it. So I think the teacher-led thing is an issue. But the main one for us is that 5th one about the usual suspects. So the same pupils getting involved in school council as get involved in other things that are similar, debating and so on. And that's not to say it's a bad thing that they're getting involved in that, but more that it shouldn't just be those pupils who get to have a voice and get to have their say. And that's one of the things that we spotted, and essentially kind of looked at the research to show, well, how that backs that up, basically. So Children's Commissioner research here shows that only 2 in 5 pupils thinks their school council listens to them. Be interested to compare that to how many people think their kind of MP listens to them, doesn't it? But yeah, so there's not very many, not a proportion of kids only think that their school council listens to them. And this is the really worrying one for us. So just take a moment with this. So pupils with more than 200 books at home, 62% vote in school council elections. But if you're a pupil with fewer than 10 books at home, then you only got a 30% chance of voting in school council elections. So I guess the question is, like, is that fair? And I'd hope you'd agree that it's not. And then, so the question is then, how do we change what we're offering with this school council to make sure that more young people, ideally everyone, could get their voice heard and have a say? So this is our starting point, basically. And essentially what we're trying to do is just involve everyone. It seems really simple. But I think that's the kind of key message of what we're trying to do. We're trying to create, instead of a school council which just involves 10, 15, 20 of the most engaged pupils, not to say that's the case with everyone, but mostly that's the case. Instead of just those pupils, we're going to try to change it so that it involves every pupil, and that schools on our program say, well, actually, we think every pupil's voice is important, and we've got a way to make sure that they're involved. And I guess that's what we want to talk a little bit about. So involving everyone sounds great, but like, how do you do it that's not that's in a way that's not really annoying and difficult, especially with everything that you guys have got going on at the moment? So so this is what we do. We've got a whole school program of pupil voice, helping schools to improve their school councils, and that works, as Karen said earlier, in a kind of big range of schools. And we try and do the following, which is essentially involving everyone, opening social action up to new students, and making sure that as much as possible it's led by students and not adults. And the way that we do that, what that actually looks like, is that everyone's involved in simple pupil-led class meetings. We'll talk about that more in a second. Action teams, activities run by pupils who don't usually get involved. And then we have something called a communication team who runs things, saving time and effort for the teacher. And we'll talk a little bit more about each of these in a second. And this is what it looks like when you introduce it to your pupils. Class meetings, giving everyone a voice, comms team kind of being the minions to help as lead teachers to run the program, and action teams are kind of social action clubs, activities or groups that emerge from any people who want to get set up and run something in the school. So that's the Smart School Council model. But I just wanted to kind of show you a resource that we find really useful in schools, which you can take away today. So it's called a progress board. And what we find with traditional kind of school council minutes is that they kind of go up on a notice board somewhere. Nobody really looks at them. Minutes aren't that exciting for too many people. What if you're like 7? You probably aren't that bothered by them. So instead of minutes and records like that, we have something called a progress board, which basically shows the various projects that are going on here on the left-hand side, and then a visual representation of how they're going. So has the cycle shed just started? The learning survey is kind of about halfway, and also has it finished? So sort of showing how we're getting on with different projects, a person who's in charge, and a kind of update of what's going on. Also things that we can't do. So those things that are always coming up: changing uniform, building swimming pool, what's it want to say? Riding bikes in playgrounds. So reasons why we can't do those. And this is best if young people themselves have written these, so they can explain to their peers kind of why something's not going to be possible, rather than a kind of adults versus kids kind of thing, which isn't helpful. And also our successes. So these are kind of things that we've completed. And these projects don't need to be big, they can be really small. It's just about showing that young people can change, and that you don't need to be on a kind of elected body to do that. Because why, if you have a really strongly held view about something you want to change in a school, why should you give that to someone else if you're the person who's really kind of keen on changing that? This is what progress board looks like. So you can see there lots of different examples of kind of what that looks like in various different schools. The one on the left is the lead teacher's husband is a sign maker. So that one is a bit unfair in terms of showing that one to you, because it's a bit of a kind of unachievable one, unless your husband or partner is a sign maker too. But yeah, you can just do it with post-it notes as well. It doesn't need to be difficult. Let me post you a link of, let me find that, sorry. Progress board, I'll find it. I'm doing my best. Okay, can't find it. Find it in a sec. But basically, I'll post it in a moment, and basically that will show. It will give you all the information to download it. So it doesn't need to be complex, but can just be nice and easy to spread out involvement. Cool. Okay, so that's an idea, and this is another way that we like to reach out to every pupil, or lots of pupils across the school. It's through our class meetings. If you remember, that's the kind of first way that we get everybody involved. So instead of if you're a democracy geek like me, and to some extent Karen, what we're not doing is having a representative group of pupils who kind of represent everyone's voice. We're just directly getting everybody in your school involved, and the way that we do that is through class meetings. So they look like this. This question is always set by the school. Your school, the comms team, sets a question. In this case, it's what charity should we fundraise for this year? And oh, thanks, Sam. Sam's popped up in the comments. He's popped the link in there for you to look at if you'd like to have a go at that. So class meetings, what are they? So they're short pupil-led meetings supported by the class meeting tool. Essentially, the lead teacher or the pupils set it up and send it to every single class or form. They click on a link, and then it goes onto the whiteboard, and it will support the pupils through the running of a class meeting. And typically you'd have a couple of pupils who would be running the meeting, so it's not up to the teacher. And it basically means that the class teacher doesn't need to know anything, because there's no prep, there's no login, there's no software to download or printing. It just means that they click on the link, and the tool will guide them through. So instead of, like, if you've ever tried class council meetings where somebody's reporting back and they've sort of forgotten what's going on, or like it all gets a bit messy. You don't really know how to kind of manage it. So this is just trying to make it really easy. It's one question, lots of examples here. Do you think it's important to have a water fountain in the sports hall? So basically you and your comms team will be setting up the questions as opposed to us telling you what's important for your school. So they're super quick as well. So it's like 5 or 10 minutes. And if you're in key stage 1, it's a little bit shorter, even with one less question at the end. And so what happens then, here's another example. You don't need to have a kind of action-based, doesn't need to be a big project. It could be a kind of topical question. So this is an example of, I think, a really cool coronavirus question about, which is more associated with kind of what's going on in the world. And basically each week we put up 5 suggested questions that you can click on if you'd like to try one of those within the tool. And then you get your results. It's all done for you, and the results then get shown at the start of the next meeting to say that, you know, you've been involved in this question about, for example, coronavirus pandemic, and 93% of us thought that the search for the vaccine would be what the focus should be. Just to kind of close that loop, because so often you say, you know, you put ideas forward and you don't really hear anything back about them. And this gives you loads of evidence for Ofsted as well. So all the ideas come through. You can show how, if you're in England, you are involving all your pupils in British values. So yeah, there's a kind of full record there as well. How'd you get set up? Sam's posted another link in there. Thank you, Sam, on just trying out the class meeting tool if you want to give it a go. It's nice and simple. And then how do you get it set up? So basically we've got like a kind of a clear program to help you through get set up. We've got lots of members who've done the same. So we sign you up for the program. We have kind of launch windows once every half term. And basically we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you, right? So we know you've got a lot on. We would then also brief your staff if you'd like that. So we do kind of bite-sized 15-minute long staff briefings, just saying, you're a class teacher or you're a form tutor, this is why we're doing this, and this is what you have to do, which is basically clicking on the link to make sure the meetings happen. So we do that for you. We'll help you set up the tool, and then we kind of support you through the process of introducing it to your students. We have CPD every term to kind of support and help you grow. Just trying to make it as easy as possible for you to embed the kind of whole school program in your school. Yeah, so that's kind of how you get set up. This is all the stuff you get. Basically manual, class meeting tool, CPD sessions, recommended class meeting questions, and we can pair you up with other established schools as well. So if for example you're in an SEN school, we can link you up with another SEN school to kind of find out how they use it, because often that's quite helpful, I think. Prices, this is what it costs for us to run this program. So we're a charity. Most of our income comes from these sales to schools. So we're really transparent about kind of what it costs for us. Everything's included in the price. We think it's really reasonable for a whole school program. And it basically, the price basically depends on your size of school. So yeah, that's what we charge. I am then just going to talk about 2 case studies very quickly. And when I'm talking about them, I guess if you've got any questions on what I've said, would love to hear them. So please do. You've put some numbers in at the start of this about how new you are at the school. Now I'd like to hear about kind of if you've got any questions about this, because I think, you know, while we're here, it's really good to get any you know, make sure you understand what we're talking about. And also, if you want to hang on at the end, we also just like hang around in the room for 5 or 10 minutes afterwards if you'd like to have a chat. But please do stick any comments, big or small, into the chat box. The one I'm thinking of that you might ask is, how often should you have class meeting questions? We recommend 12 a year, so 2 every half term. Some schools do them every week. Other schools do them once every half term. And I think Laurie School here in Richard Elbon in Barking and Dagenham, they do them every week from year 1 to year 6. And the year 6s support the younger years. I guess that's a bit more possible now than it has been over the last year. And they have a really small communication team, 15 year 5s and 6. We don't need a representative from every class on that comms team because it's not representing everyone's voice. They're just running it, helping to run it. And it's helped 7% of the pupils get involved before the intervention, but now it's up to 100%. 10% are involved in social action. So it's just about trying to make it really easy to broaden out to everybody. And if you're in a secondary, so Becky's been a member of Smart School Councils for ages. She's in Burnage Academy for Boys up in Manchester. They only have their class meetings every half term, and I think they have like more of a kind of big ceremony around them. Comms team is still similarly small, but I guess the big impact is that they've seen the number of pupils get involved in social action up to 20% of their school. So I guess for a large secondary, that's pretty amazing. I think that so many pupils are leading a club or being part of an activity from a much lower percentage before. So that's a couple of case studies. I think Sam's popped some a couple of videos if you want to watch them. We'll also follow up after this with any thoughts on with all the links that we've mentioned. So any questions? Karen, when you were teaching, what question would you ask to me? If you're like, this sounds good, but I'm not sure, what might you ask?
You put me on the spot there, Greg.
Sorry.
It's all right. I think for me, I'm just thinking of myself at the start of the year. You've got a million other things running through your head. You want to know how easy it is, how much time does it take, practically how you do it. So I think knowing that it can be done quickly, that it can be done easily, and that it's genuinely is not going to take a lot of my time would kind of provide me with reassurance. So that will probably be at the forefront of my mind starting a new academic year as a teacher. Is I want to do it. I've got the inclination to do it, but practically, is it possible that I can set it up quickly and with minimal time and minimal resources from myself?
Definitely. Great question, Karen. Thank you. And I guess like we're not trying to you don't need to, if you're interested in this, you don't need to join straight away. You know, if you do want to, our kind of launch windows are towards the end of the month because we don't want schools to be kind of stressing about this. So if you'd like to kind of wait a little while and see how, if you've got any more questions, then please do kind of drop us an email. But I guess like what our kind of intention is that if you're running the school council anyway, that we want to make your job much easier than it could be, and make it easy, but also much more powerful. So not just sitting in a room with a bunch of kids who are going to agree with you once every half term, but genuinely giving everybody a voice in your school. And I think, a lot of the way that the world's going at the moment with climate change and Black Lives Matter and lots of really, really important social movements, there's more of a demand, I think, that everybody's voice should be involved. So I do feel like it's important, and I think what we're trying to do at the same time is try and make it easy. So yeah, hopefully that's kind of give you a bit of a kind of flavour of why what we're doing is an important thing, but also not too arduous. So we do want to kind of hear from you if you do have any questions, though. There's no questions come through, Karen. I think everyone's just frazzled out from it being the 7th of September. So let me mention one more thing. If anyone's got any last minute questions, then please just let us know. So during the pandemic, we set up a program called the Big Debate Club, which is a kind of oracy online digital tool, which basically helps every week your pupils, so upper key stage 2, lower key stage 3, to run a class debate. in this case, we're setting the questions about these. So I think the question this week is, should esports be in the Olympics? I didn't know what esports were, but apparently they're computer games. So interesting question. So it's a basically kind of 10-minute activity that you can do for free, any school or at home. And you can just kind of click on the link and it will guide you through. Just meant to be a sort of snappy livener or like lesson starter to get those kind of speaking, listening skills going in the morning or whenever you want to do it. There's a bunch of you don't also have to do the debate from that week. There's lots of older debates that you can access. Is there too much money in football? Things like that. Is school detention a good thing? These are all kind of debates that you can access from just by going to bigdebateclub.com. So that's a kind of another thing that you could access if you'd like. I've also put our email address in there. So if you do have any, which is just membership@smartschoolcouncils.org.uk. So if you do want to get in touch, then you can. Gemma, thanks for the question. So Gemma's asked, how would you recommend setting up the school council in terms of voting, encouraging pupils to be to apply to be a member of the school council? So I guess what we're kind of suggesting that everybody's voice is important and everybody should be on the school council, and that the way that we do that is by having these kind of regular class meetings. So I guess it's a bit of a kind of different approach rather than saying, well, we want to have an election for 10 or 12 pupils who then go away and kind of decide and do those things. Lots of our schools do have an election for their communication team, which is the kind of group who runs it. But it's not the group who kind of decides and does everything. But if if our approach isn't for you, if you are more inclined to kind of stick with the traditional model, then I think an election is a good way to do it. But I would be concerned about how everybody's voice is involved, because it's quite difficult. I don't know if you're in a primary or secondary, but it's often quite difficult to kind of feedback and get ideas from other people, and then feedback once those ideas have kind of been kind of taken forward or otherwise. So but yeah, I would go for an election. Hopefully that's a little bit helpful. I can see that someone else is typing. Is that Gemma, or is that Sam, or is that you, Karen? Not you. No, you're at your standing desk. So we'll just hang on, because I think there's another question. Okay, great. Thank you, Bryony. When an action team is working on an issue, what support is given by your scheme? So good question. So we think it's important that action teams can be set up by anyone, not just the people who've been elected. But of course, what I think what your question's getting at is we don't want 100 action teams set up with everybody doing everything and it being really difficult to track. So quite often what we suggest, or what we see schools doing, is that they say, okay, so this term we're going to have maybe 2 action teams, and limiting it in that way to make sure that it's not too much of a kind of a free-for-all or too difficult to manage. And then what we suggest is that those action teams get matched up with a staff sponsor. So we, in many cases, see a bit of an overlap between the interests of the school or particular teacher. So for example, if a reading club wants to get started, or a revision club, then you might see, well, who might be interested. So it might be an English teacher or somebody with additional responsibilities for reading in the school who might be interested in sponsoring that group. And ultimately, they probably don't need to do very much, but it's about kind of supporting them to maybe have some time in the library, or ensuring that they have access at the right times. And I guess what we do is we support with the kind of system around that. So we might be able to guide you on kind of, well, how many action teams did you have? How would we pick? We have lots of kind of resources helping you to kind of think, well, okay, you've had 10 people who want to set up action teams. How do you pick the ones that are going to be most, I guess, supportive or helpful, or like, because often when you're starting out, you want kind of quick wins. So, yeah, we don't come into the school to help, but we do kind of support with the system and helping you to decide who might be the best people to give the opportunity to. Yeah, so I hope that answered that questions. Sam said, I would add, Greg, that the comms team have a role in supporting action teams too, with guidance, reminders, and even help getting others involved. Yeah, so the comms team also, quite often, each member of the comms team has a specific role. For example, we have 2 people who are question finders, and they are in charge of supporting the lead teacher to find questions for class meetings. So what's on the mind of pupils or teachers or community, people around the school, what questions can they ask? So, and also there's 2 people on the comms team who have action team developer roles, and they're about kind of supporting action teams to fill in their form, say, I want to start an action team. Well, okay, you need 5 people to sign it to start. You need a staff sponsor, that kind of thing, so that pupils themselves can be supporting that as opposed to just the lead teacher. So, but it's a really good question, Brian. Thank you. Yeah, because obviously we want to keep that as manageable as possible, but also being open to the right people to who've actually got something to say and do and are committed to that, and we want to give them an opportunity as well. Cool. Okay, great. So, Karen, any final words from you?
Not really, to be honest. When you were just talking though about that last part, when you're answering Bryony, just reminded me of a similar situation in my school. You probably find there are elements that you're already doing in your school, but the fact that Smart School Council helps provide that kind of system to join them all together is fab. Because I know before I came to work for Smart School Council, there were things that I was doing within school which were Pupil Voice and providing children with opportunities to run their own clubs and do their own activities and lead change in the school, but that wasn't being recorded. It wasn't part of like a discussion across the school. You couldn't evidence it to Ofsted. So I think the thing that I think is really useful through Smart School Councils is the fact that, as Greg said, you can use this system to actually raise the profile of student voice, but also that you can evidence what actually is probably already going on in your school in pockets, and kind of provide that whole structure across your entire school.
Great, thank you, Karen. That's a great point. Thank you. Cool. Okay, so really appreciate everybody coming along today. It's great that you were here. I know what's a busy time for you, so yeah, if you'd like to kind of find out more or join the program, there's a button at the top of your screen. But if not, Karen and I will be hanging around in the room if you want to ask any questions. So please feel free to hang around. But if not, thank you very much for joining, and I wish you a very good kind of start to the term. Oh, hi, Natalie. Thanks for the question there. I realised I was just about to type a response, which was silly because I can just talk. You can basically you can join anytime. So if you just wanted to join, then we would essentially put you in a we would kind of sign you up, and we would arrange that for you. So essentially you could. So the next joining window is on the last week of September and the first week of October. So if you wanted to join this half term, then I guess that's the window that we suggest. We do recognize that sometimes, if you wanted to do something a bit later, then we do have a bit of flexibility. But ideally, that those are the windows that we'd like to stick to as a small charity. If you wanted to join after Christmas, then you could do so. We'll have a after half term, then we'd have another window before Christmas. But basically, we shouldn't have to wait very long. But the starting point is joining and then chatting to us. So do drop us an email if you'd like to do that, or just join up with a link on the screen. You're welcome, Natalie. Thank you. Bryony, I need to look at how our existing captain system with this. I'd like to merge what already works well with a way of getting everyone involved. Absolutely. I'm guessing you're probably in a secondary then with that question. So yeah, absolutely. We're not in the business of saying scrap primary independent. Sorry. Okay. Totally got that wrong. We're not in the business of sort of saying you should scrap what you're doing already, but we are in the business of saying that everybody's voice is important, and we want to support schools to ensure that they can do that easily. So if that means that we need to look at a way to kind of merge two systems a little bit. So a lot of schools have like head boy and head girl systems that I think can work well with this. So yeah, if you want to explore that in any greater depth before joining, then do just drop us an email, because we'd like to kind of make sure it works for you. But yeah, it's a good question, and yeah, thanks very much for coming along. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Sam or Karen, who's now popped up on our screen. Thanks, Anne. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Bryony. Glad that was useful. Cool. Well, I think that's just us, guys.